Okay. Because, yeah, 4 is the end of the millennium, and I remember it being like 1,000 years since 2. So, okay. Right, okay. So you fight Dark Force twice in the span of, like, 10 years, then? Because I think they said there was a 20-year gap, at least in the path I chose, between generations 2 and 3. So. Right, yeah. Like, I'm not crazy, right? Like, granting, I don't know if this is the canon ending, and from what I understand, it's actually not, but I don't know how different the other ones are. But like Chaos said, I'm glad I wasn't the only one that thought that. It kind of makes it sound like, oh, they're setting back up on Earth. Which, you know, it did make it sound sort of like Dark Force, you know. I don't know, like there was a sort of time loop kind of thing going on here. But anyway, so Phantasy Star 3. It's been mentioned that this is kind of the, kind of the black sheep of the series. Did I enjoy it? Yes. On balance, I would say I did. You know. Would I recommend playing it? That's kind of a different question. I just can't get past that encounter rate, honestly. The encounter rate, and some of the other kind of old-school RPG, you know, quibbles, where you have to find, you know, random NPCs in corners of villages in order to, like, activate triggers to allow you to move on. But, you know, like, that stuff I can mainly deal with. Like, but that encounter rate is just crazy. Like, what the game really needed was for, like, the stuff with Ren, the vehicles and stuff, it needed that a generation sooner. And maybe you get that if you take the path I didn't take at the end of the first generation. I don't know. But, ugh. But just that encounter rate, it's... Like, even by old-school RPG standards, that encounter rate is... Ugh. It's absurd, and just that alone, I don't know if I can get past that. As far as, like, would I recommend that you play this game? Is it as bad as its reputation, the game as a whole? No, certainly not. And I think you'll enjoy it if you just try and play it as its own thing. And kind of try to forget that it's supposed to be a quote-unquote Phantasy Star game. That was kind of what I had to do. I will admit it took me probably 3 or 4 tries to really get started in it before I finally managed to really get going in it 5 years ago. And in order to do it, I had to kind of put my presumption of what a Phantasy Star game, quote-unquote, is supposed to be kind of aside. And just kind of play it on its own terms. And I found a lot there to like. It just, encounter rate aside, it is just so close to being such a great game. Like, with its storytelling and things. And then, like, it does silly things like Lyle said farewell to Thea and then he died. That just kind of ruined it. But yeah, that was Phantasy Star 3. I guess I would say play the first generation. Yeah, exactly. Like, and 3 at least 2 also had, like, the teleport stations between towns, and it had telepipes. So, like, you didn't have to at least wander the overworld or the dungeons. Whereas this game, you have escapipes, and that's it for most of the game. Okay, so now that, you know, now that I've beaten the game, you can feel free to spoil things from some of the other timelines, some of the other paths. if I had chosen to marry Lena as opposed to Maya at the end of Generation 1, I mean, I doubt it because you get the legendary weapons from, you know, the stuff in those areas. But would I have gotten the vehicles in Generation 2 had I taken the other path? Because, yeah, 2 also has a pretty high encounter rate, although I think this is even higher. Although 2's battles are tougher on balance, I would say. Like I mentioned before, like, here, an individual battle is not dangerous. It's just the fact that you get into encounters every 3 steps, and there's, you know... And even with that, you only have so many resources that... You know... I do think I kind of broke that last encounter in a way, because I went back, I bailed out after the first part of that dungeon. After the city part. I feel like the game doesn't really expect you to do that. Okay. But anyway... Yeah, like, that's the thing. So, like, Phantasy Star 2, you could lessen the effect somewhat with telepipes and escapipes and the teleport stations between towns. Whereas this game, although I think the world and the dungeons themselves were a little bit more compact than 2, you had none of that. You just had to walk everywhere and get into fights every 3 steps. And even 2 had something called a hide-a-pipe, which I've never used, but as I understand it, it reduces the encounter rate, kind of like a repel in Dragon Quest. You know, this game doesn't even have that, so you just have to get into battles every 3 steps. And you, like, you just have to get, you know, you just have to fight every 3 steps, because even if you get a preemptive attack, there's no guarantee you'll be able to run from the monster, so you're better off just fighting them. You know? But anyway. But I did stick it through to the end. Like I said, on balance, even with all that, I enjoyed it. I don't know that I would... Yeah, or at least pseudo-forced grinding. Which in turn means you have way more money than the game expects you to. Which in turn, you know... Okay, let's see. And sorry. Okay, so yeah, it looks like had I gone a different way, there were a few different characters I could have gotten. I'm just kind of looking here. Some of the, which may also explain why I got some items where I was like, wait, why do I have these items? Like, I got a Force Staff in Generation 3. And, like, swords and things that I wasn't ever going to use. So it's possible that the different characters, they do slightly different things, too. But anyway...